brand new album from Vince Staples, who is a West Coast rapper who's been on the scene for quite a few years at this point, actually. I remember when Blue Suede dropped. I was there. I'm one of those guys. I was there. And I remember Hell Can Wait as well, back in 2014. Obviously, since then, he's grown to be quite a well-known rapper who has quite a fun personality in interviews and stuff. He's similar to like Tyler, the Creator, who has a very good, goofy sense of humor that just really translates well with fans. To the point where I've seen a lot of people even say at this point that they prefer Vince's personality to the music itself. But there's still that dedicated following, and for good reason. He's had a pretty versatile career. I mean, the Hell Can Wait EP is very different to the Prima Donna EP. Summertime '06 is very different to FM, and FM is very different to Big Fish Theory. He knows how to, utilize his producers in a way that kind of brings out a different side to his personality, to his music every time he drops something new. And I'd say that carries on over onto this self-titled album here as well. Once again, it doesn't really feel like anything he's done before, although it's not completely out of the realms of anything he's done. It's certainly not as left field or as off kilter as Big Fish Theory was. But I actually think the restrained and somber, pensive sound that he's going for here on this one, with Kenny Beats on production, actually fits his style the best it ever has, I think. For me, Big Fish Theory always had potential. I think there was something great to come out of that style, that combination of ideas. There was something bubbling, but it just wasn't that album. I think if he carried on and tried experimenting with those kinds of producers and things like that, those kinds of beats, he would have dropped a great album doing that thing. But I just don't think Big Fish Theory was that great album. But this time around, Vince Staples is actually just utilizing the production in such a way that really heightens the emotion coming out of his voice. It's certainly not experimental by any means in terms of the weird, quirky production or anything like that, but it doesn't need to be when the beats actually fit his tone of voice, that pained tone that really comes through incredibly well. Like, this is the perfect production for a rapper with this tone. At first I wasn't sure, because I thought Law of Averages was just too pulled back, too reined in, but I really don't think that is the case now. It's almost like that track reaction hasn't aged too well, because I think in context with the album, I do think this works really nicely. Like, that really lethargic tone that Vince is rapping with just heightens the mood. It's such a mood-setting track, and I think with some of the themes and some of the lyrics that he comes out with across this entire album, I don't think this song really should have been any other way. And actually, I like the way he's flowing over this as well. Sure, it does stay very similar for the entire runtime of the track, but it's not a bad thing. And I do think, again, these kinds of beats are just working well with his voice. It reminds me very much of when Earl Sweatshirt dropped The Mint, which was a great track, but just isolated outside of the context of what the album was trying to do. It just feels a bit like, this is a bit odd, but I think, no, now it works. Are You With That is a great opening track that transitions quite nicely actually into Law of Averages. I think that 1-2 punch is really good. Of course, talking about his background on this one, talking about how he always wanted to be like a gangster and always wanted to be part of that gang life. But as we've discovered through the reality and the harsh reality that he painted on FM, and I think even better on this album here, that kind of lifestyle isn't really the kind of life I don't think Vince really wanted or really wants for anyone, to be honest. One thing I will say is that I could have gone into a bit more detail with some of these tracks, because there's some really great one-liners that pop out that really highlight the harsh reality of the lifestyle and his life. But the thing that works actually really well with this album is that he doesn't always need to say it, because you can hear that raspy, downbeaten, almost depressed voice coming through that shows the reality rather than having to say it. It's like that sort of thing that's like, you know, it goes without saying. I feel like he doesn't need to say everything on this album to paint up the emotion and the feelings that are coming out. Sundown Town is a good track, really like this one. Once again, restrained, but really works well. I think he's flowing nicely on this track. That line about where he's saying he's lost too many friends says more than really anything you could ever say. But the one line that I thought was quite odd was where he says he's too paranoid to shake his fans' hands. I'm not sure if I missed something with that, but I thought that was an interesting line. Not really sure if that's just kind of trying to paint up his lack of trust, because there's another track that points out that lack of trust he has in people, where he says he has no trust in anyone. And I think this line is kind of just trying to portray that there's just so much awfulness in the world that even his own fans are difficult to trust, because shaking their hands is a bit too much for him, because he just can't really seem to trust anyone. The chorus is really interesting on this one though, where it kind of isn't even a chorus, but it works so well. I don't know what it is about it, but I actually really like how just quiet it is and how non-chorus like it is. The Shining for me has one of the best beats. I think Kenny Beats generally can kind of fade for me when I hear him on projects. I think usually his job is to sort of cater towards the artist's sound, their overall aesthetic, and sometimes that can just make the artist, the rapper, shine over the beats. That's what I think anyway. I don't know if many people agree with that. I think he does a good job of what he does, but I wouldn't really say he has a distinct sound with his beats. But this is one track that really stood out to me in terms of the instrumental. Again though, some really interesting lyrics coming through, where Vince says it's not what you think on the chorus, we could die within a blink. I feel once again that does do a good job of what FM did quite well, although I wasn't a fan of FM, but I think what it did do well was how, you know, the chorus can just say more than you actually realize, and it highlights the tragedies of what the kind of gangster lifestyle can bring. The song can sound a bit more upbeat and a bit more amped up, but when you read into what Vince is saying, the reality really comes through. That's the kind of thing I'm saying here. I think this track does that well. Taking Trips, surprisingly, has one of the more basic hooks on the whole thing. There weren't really many hooks that stood out in a way that I'd call catchy or anything like that, but they do their job well, and they're still good hooks, but this one is definitely the catchiest. I'm surprised at how he's just kind of saying dripping, dripping, dripping over and over again, and it doesn't get boring. It kind of reminds me of like a J. Cole type chorus, honestly, where it's just so simple and straight to the point. But I think Vince actually makes this work. Interesting line as well about how he hates the summer because the crime is high. He also just doesn't really like the heat either, but an interesting lyric that I never really thought about. Is crime higher in the summer? Maybe where he's from it is. I don't know. I have never thought about that actually, but again, interesting one-liners coming through here that really make you think about things. I was saying how much I like The Shining's instrumental, but the best instrumental, the most fired up and eclectic instrumental, I think, is Lil Fade. I love this beat, man. It kind of makes you ignore everything else that's been going on with the lyrics because the beat is just so good, which is interesting. Again, I wonder if that was intentional, just to kind of drown out the harsh realities of your surrounding through this kind of beat. Don't know, but it's still really good. And then is the closing track, which has this really sassy delivery from Vince that I really like, especially on the chorus. Randomly reminds me of something like Rhapsody would do, something she would do on her Layla's Wisdom album. Maybe makes more sense than you realise. They are both West Coast rappers. Perhaps that kind of crossover makes sense there. I don't know, it definitely reminds me of something she'd do though. An interesting way to close things out, not really a distinct finale to this album, especially considering it's self-titled too, and there's been so much to unpack with the lyrics. I thought this one might have just had a bit more of a big grand finish. Not that it's not a bad song, but I just thought it might have just ended in a different way. Still good though, and actually highlights how good Vince has done with this album. Like, it's so short, so straight to the point, but I think it's his best to date, or at least in his top 2. I'm not quite sure, but I actually really like this one. I was surprised because Vince can be a bit hit and miss for me with albums. Usually I take 1 song or 2 songs away from each album as being really strong highlights, and then I kind of put away the rest, but this is definitely the most consistent I think he's been so far. I would say that the 2 interludes are a bit, it kind of puts me off, because I think when you've given such a short album and you're throwing in 2 interludes, which basically makes it an 8-track album when there were 10 tracks originally, and then 2 of them are interludes. I don't know, man. I think artists have got to stop doing this. I don't really think they add a huge amount to the album either. And I just would have preferred those 2 songs to just be Vince rapping. Just give us some rapping tracks, man. Just do your thing. You were doing your thing so well. Do the same thing on those 2 tracks. I think that's all I wanted. So with that in mind, I still think this is really good. I think a 7 out of 10 is where I'm at. I think this could even grow on me further, because like I say, Law of Averages has grown on me, and that's only been out, you know, a month or so. So who's to say in a few months' time this couldn't even grow on me even more? But I still think, like I say, really good. The score's not the most important thing, because my recommendation to you is to go listen to this, because I think Vince has done a very good job with this new album. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm interested to see what people think, actually, because I know the bold claim of me saying it's his best album to date might not really resonate with many people. Some people might think it's his worst. Some people might think it's somewhere in the middle. Let me know what you think. Maybe drop a ranking of his albums too. That would be cool. Thank you for watching, as always. Do subscribe if you haven't already. And goodbye. Goodbye.